Let's continue with today's coverage of the DA's Federal Congress. Earlier, we heard party leader Musi Maimane urging party members to continue being activists in their respective constituencies. And he was addressing the party's two-day elective conference, which is underway in Pretoria. Maimane has also moved to emphasize that the party belongs to all South Africans as it embraces diversity. He did, however, express outrage at what he calls political opponents' racial populism against the DA. While Aldrin Sampier, our reporter, is at the Tshwane Event Centre and he joins us with the latest update from that side. Aldrin, what is the latest from that side at this stage?
Well, yes, it's the open session now where various resolutions are being discussed and being debated. One of those resolutions that has just been adopted is access to jobs. Remember that the resolution that has been debated here at Congress, that has been brought forward to Congress, is that there should be a job seekers fund, which will be 150 Rand, meaning that government, that if the DA does become the governing party in 2019 or at some other stage, it becomes the governing party, that it will give youths between the ages of 18 to 34 150 Rand to go and look for employment. This will be 150 Rand they will be receiving per month. As part of the debate that has been going on at the moment, that resolution has now been amended, and the 150 Rand amount that has been stipulated or that has been attached to this clause has now been removed. So there is no amount attached to it, so it is open to interpretation. It'll probably go back to the DA's Federal Council to discuss what amount should be attached to job seekers, people who are seeking jobs between the ages of 18 and 34. The current debate that's happening in the background is a debate around the job seekers exemption certificate. You may see that some of the delegates have the red cards up or either the green cards up, which means they either agree with the resolution that's currently being discussed or an amendment to the resolution that's currently being discussed, or they disagree. The green means that they agree, the red means that they do not agree with the resolution. And one of that amendment is quite interesting, because what the amendment looks at is that the amendment looks at amending the labor law. Remember that there has been a resolution that has been taken by government that there will be a minimum wage, meaning that when that minimum wage does come into fruition, what the DA is putting into when the DA is the governing party, what it will then do is that it will then make sure that those job seekers who have been searching for a job and not receiving any joy whatsoever, that they can opt out of that minimum wage and go into a discussion with the employer and discuss with the employer whether they're willing to accept a lesser wage that has been prescribed by law. Let me just quickly bring in a DA member, Mabine, quickly in here. Mabine, let's just quickly unpack this. Let's speak about the job seekers exemption certificate. Just quickly tell us more about what this entails. I know that there was a resolution. The resolution looked at about 12 months. If a job seeker has been looking for work for over about 12 months, if they feel that they want to opt out, they get a certificate and they can opt out.
Well, ultimately what that does is that often things like minimum wage can be an inhibitor for a lot of young people who want to work. So therefore we want to put some sort of job experience and economic wealth in the work of people so that they can, whilst they're looking for this work, earn some sort of income. And this is not to now exploit young people, but to ensure that we are getting young people working, we are getting them the necessary experience whilst they are looking for work, and being able to ensure that we have a state and young people that are working.
Does this not undo what has already been tried to have been done by government and even at a NEDLAC level? Because this has been a discussion that has been ongoing, and now that there has been this resolution that has been, of course, led by the governing party, that now the DA, should the DA become the governing party, that it will undo all this good work that has been accepted. What is it, 3,500, the minimum wage as it currently stands?
Well, our position long-standing has been that you can't have an across-the-board minimum wage. In fact, it should be a sectoral minimum wage, that different sectors should have different minimum wage, because the labor done in certain sectors is not the same as others. And it makes it quite clear what people are going to earn in different sectors of society. Because, for instance, a policeman can't earn the same amount, for instance, as someone who's washing a car. The skill sets are different, the levels of expertise are different. Therefore, that's why we're pushing for a sectoral minimum wage rather than a blanket minimum wage.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's just quickly speak about another resolution, and this is the access to jobs. Of course, there was an amount that was attached to the initial resolution, which was 150 rand per month for a youth aged between 18 and 34. What has been adopted here is that there shouldn't be any amount, there shouldn't be any value attached to this clause. What does this mean? Will there be a value be determined by the Federal Council, perhaps?
Yes, these are matters that will receive further debate and discussion by the Federal Council. But ultimately, what we're saying is that it costs money to look for work. I mean, the price of printing your CV, the data used in terms of looking for jobs and so on. So we need to be able to capacitate young people to make it easier for them to find work. And
you're not creating a nanny state where people start relying on the state for money, really, for social assistance.
We must be acutely aware of the economic circumstances of South Africa. We have 9 million jobless South Africans and growing. We have millions of South Africans accessing social grants. So there needs to be that kind of state assistance, not nanny state. It's the state stepping in where it should be to offer social assistance for South Africans.
Mm-hmm. There was something similar that has been tried by the city of Cape Town, where, for instance, they give free bus rides to people who are looking for jobs. I wonder whether you'd be able to say whether that has worked in the city of Cape Town.
Yes, it has worked, and we're starting to roll that out in Nelson Mandela Bay as well, and it's showing great success. In fact, the people of Nelson Mandela Bay can't stop talking about the measure. In fact, they feel that this is now a city that is working for them. This is a city that understands their needs.
Could it be something that is expanded to the city of Tshwane as well as the city of Joburg, perhaps at some point?
Absolutely. I mean, that's why we're here at Congress today, so we can standardize the types of programs that we roll out across the board where we govern. You must understand budgets are different in different cities and what they can do, but this Congress here is looking at ways in which we can standardize programs that we roll out across the board.
One of the resolutions that will also be coming up for discussion is the 14% VAT, which is now obviously increased to 15%. The DA is quite clear, even after the former finance minister made the announcement that VAT will be increasing by 1% to 15%. You've also had a petition that people can sign on. What difference do you think Congress can steer towards ensuring that it puts pressure even on the governing party as it stands at the moment, that it repeals that 1%?
Well, ultimately, we can't have South Africans in the main poor paying for government's mess-ups. Why must we be bailing out a SAA? Why must we have a cabinet that's the size, in fact, one of the biggest in the world? We want to cut that down to 15 ministries. So there is money there which can be shifted to other places. And it's not necessary to make South Africans pay for the mess-ups of government. In fact, government must put forward programs that ensure that they're able to cut the fat. So we're going to put pressure across the board in parliament, in councils, and on the streets of Johannesburg to ensure that poor South Africans in the main aren't made to pay for the ANC government's plundering of the state resources.
The DA has a great record of challenging some of these resolutions or whatever decision that has been taken by government in a court of law. Is this something that you would probably be looking at?
Well, I think that's something that we'll have to discuss when we come to that juncture. But I think what these resolutions are showing, they may not be exciting and wow, but what it shows is that we're in the mindset of gearing up to be a party national government. We want to show the people of South Africa what is it that we're going to do for them when we're national government. They've seen what we can do at local government. They see what we can do at provincial government. But now we need to sit here at this Congress and tell the people of South Africa, tell our members that this is the kind of national government that we're going to offer the people of South Africa.
Also 0% VAT on sanitary towels. Tell us more about that.
Well, we have free condoms being handed out. At the same time, sanitary pads shouldn't be a burden, because this is something that that can sometimes infringe on the dignity of young women, especially. Young women miss days and days of school because they can't afford sanitary pads. So as Democratic Alliance and the government incoming, we want to tell the people of South Africa that this is a government that cares about the dignity, especially of young women. There's no reason why young women should miss out on education because they can't afford sanitary pads.
I presume that this resolution mainly focuses on young women coming from poor backgrounds, right?
Yes, ultimately, and we've I mean, if you see a lot of we've spoken about the 0%, well, he's dropping the VAT and other measures, which shows that we've got a very poor focus. I mean, in the city of Cape Town, more than 60% of the budget goes to poor communities. Equally so in Nelson Mandela Bay, we can say that majority of the budget is going to poor communities. That's why we fought very hard in the city of Nelson Mandela Bay to ensure that we're able to keep that government, because there was no reason why the EFF wanted to remove Ethel Trollip as mayor or the Democratic Alliance as the government there, because it was a government that was delivering, most especially to poor communities.
Is the 0% VAT on sanitary towels really or truly pro-poor, considering, of course, that the ANC-led government has already taken a decision that sanitary towels should be given out for free in schools where children come from previously disadvantaged areas?
Well, I mean, we can talk about the school aspect, turning that out at schools, but still, it's still a burden on mothers or elderly women to spend money on this product when it's something that they shouldn't have to spend such a huge amount on.
You make the example of free condoms. Why not free sanitary towels?
Well, we can equally push that. These things are progressive. As a party, there's some things that you cannot push at the beginning. Even when we talk about social grants, we've talked about increasing that gradually, showing that our commitment is to poor South Africans and that we're not going to say things for the sake of populism. We'll say that this is the program of action in which we'll gradually roll out.
I actually noticed when the leader of the DA, when he launched the discussion documents or the policy documents, 2 days ago, and he mentioned the issue around the social grants, he didn't attach an amount to it. Is that deliberate? Is it open up to Congress to decide how gradual the social grants should increase? What is envisaged at some stage about how much a mother should be receiving?
Well, ultimately, our core focus around the social grants, especially for children, is that you need an amount of money that fully addresses the nutritional needs of a child. You can't send a hungry child to school. It's difficult for a child to fully develop at the early childhood development stage if they're not receiving the requisite nutritional needs. Therefore, it's up for the floor of Congress to say how we take this further, how we're going to cost it into our various proposals to the people of South Africa. But ultimately, it's something that we're very serious about, ensuring that poor South Africans are taken care of by the state which they vote for.
Okay, I didn't see whether this is part of your resolutions, but the issue around coalition governance. I know that the ANC, for instance, that they are coming up with a document that would look into what type of party they would want to go into a coalition with. And you have found yourself in a bit of a tight spot with the EFF, especially in Nelson Mandela Bay, as you mentioned earlier on. Is this something that Congress should be looking into? Which political party would the DA find itself suitable to partner with in governing a certain municipality or co-governing?
We must state up front that we're not in coalition with the EFF. The EFF chose to vote with a DA-led coalition. But at the same time, when we go into coalitions, we put conditions on the table, first and foremost being clean governance, and second, a zero tolerance to corruption. And then there are other measures. But ultimately, at the end of the day, when we sit down with partners who we want to build a better South Africa with, we say, okay, what is the program of action that we want? And first and foremost, it must benefit poor South Africans, and second, must ensure that we have a capable state that's able to deliver deliver on these programs. But I mean, the future of South African politics, that's why even the ANC, a party that's quickly losing legitimacy, is discussing this matter, because the future of South African politics is coalition governments. There's no guarantee that we'll have an outright majority when it comes to national government. We're looking at governing this province, Gauteng, on our own. Therefore, these discussions around coalitions must happen, but they must happen in responsible and
Values is very important, and that's what Mmusi Maimane was saying as well. And he was saying that he was quite encouraged that some of the candidates who are vying for some of the positions that are up for grabs when the voting starts tomorrow, that they are campaigning based on values. But then how do you marry the values that the party has adopted for itself when it goes to a coalition or an agreement with a party like the Patriotic Alliance, for instance, in the Eastern Cape in PE?
Well, ultimately, we speak to them and we say, do you fully envisage a coalition government that's going to work for the people, putting the people first? Because that's always been our mission as the Democratic Alliance, to ensure that the people of South Africa come first. If we can do that, then we can work together. If we have a zero-tolerance approach to corruption, then we can do that. If you speak about an economy that's inclusive and benefits, especially those who've been left behind in the main black South Africans, then we can sit down and talk.
Okay, then, perfect. Thank you so much for your time. We'll continue with our coverage of the DA's Federal Congress, which is currently taking place here at the Tshwane Event Center. We can see that a number of resolutions are currently being discussed. It's a very thick book that they have to go through over the next 2 days. But quite importantly as well is the positions that are up for grabs. And we're hoping to speak to some of the candidates, who will be vying for some of those positions. Very importantly, though, is the tight contest between Ethel Trollip as well as Solim Simang and Annalise. And that's